Courtney Cronin is brought to you by Purple Wave Auction. Courtney, we were just reacting. You were upstairs at the press conference, reacting like, again, it's a press conference, and I know we could fall in love with guys based on their 9-minute answers, but his performance, he acted like he knows he belongs here. Like, there are a lot of questions, like, hey, are you shocked that you're in the NFL? What I loved his answer about, by the way, like, what was his backup plan? And he's like, I was going to CrossFit the hell out of this thing and get all jacked and be a high school teacher in my hometown high school.
That's your high school principal walking down the aisle, and he's walking down the hallway, and he's just jacked, and he would
tank top
in Martinsburg High School, which is his alma mater. What a cool turn of events for him. Just a year ago, I mean, you heard him talking about Westchester. I would assume that's a Division II school. I don't know what conference they're in, but clearly a different opponent than 365 days later preparing for the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, I think like balancing the shock of the moment, because no matter what, it's going to feel surreal, whether you're prepared for it or whether you're not. Now that he's had time to digest this and realize very likely he's going to be starting a game this weekend in the NFL, a dream that, you know, he obviously had for a very long time and believed in, whether it was a long shot or not. You still have to, you know, temper those things in that moment, because it's hard to say, okay, I've just had my blinders on, this is the only thing I'm focused on. When he gets out there, when he's taking snaps with the ones during warm-ups and it's a loud Soldier Field, of course that's going to hit you, and how he's able to manage the emotion of realizing a dream, I think that's easier said than done for anybody, no matter what, and especially somebody like that who's now just about to get his first shot.
Yeah, you never know, like, I know everyone goes to the Kurt Warner story about him bagging groceries and an Arena League guy was not drafted. And obviously that's a once in a 1,000-year story. But like Josh McCown, for instance, Josh McCown at one time was a 3rd-round draft pick who found himself out of the league, who was, I believe, at one time coaching high school football when he got his second lease on life, and he came back. And then he ended up being in the league for like 8 or 9 more years as a backup quarterback, and he was able to do a lot of stuff. There was Nick Foles, who, again, who put up good numbers with the Philadelphia Eagles and was really close to retiring and was a 3rd-string quarterback for a lot of years. And then he came back and he won a Super Bowl. Like, you just never know when that right time is going to hit you. Whether or not it's Bagent's time, whether this is the right place for him, we'll see. But it's cool to think about it going into this game.
For sure. And, I mean, he's worked towards this moment. I think what stood out to me is that, you know, you talk to guys in the locker room, and I asked him this. Nobody knows what his playing style is right now because we haven't seen it. I mean, you can go back to what he did at Shepherd University, but does that translate to the NFL? Some of it does, but doesn't tell you a true measure of who he is now at this phase of his career. And he's going to get to start to put that image of himself, that version of himself on tape this weekend. And it's a great opportunity for someone who very clearly is prepared. When I was talking with Tyler Scott after the game, and, you know, I think he had 4 targets. You can tell that Bagent was locking in on him. Why? Because he's practicing with him more times than he's practicing probably with DJ Moore and some of the other, you know, receivers who were, you know, Justin Fields is targeting more often. So he's going to get a chance now to show all of that preparation that guys have praised him for, that, you know, he's the first guy, one of the first guys on the plane looking up, you know, watching the film back. Like, that stuff should help you. Now, does it mean that he's going to have an awesome game against an NFL defense? Maybe, maybe not. What they can do, though, is prepare him by scheming some easier throws in there to help him through this moment, because no matter what, it's going to be a challenge for him to get out there, for him to command an offense, even though everyone has said that he's done it before and they've been impressed with what they've seen. They saw it in the preseason. They saw it when teams are not blitzing. They saw all of these other instances where the pressure was not as high as it's going to be this Sunday.
Can you give us a guess as to what you believe the offensive line in front of him is going to look like on Sunday?
I think it will be Larry Borum still at left tackle, Tevin Jenkins at left guard, Lucas Patrick at center, and then over at right guard, probably
Whitehair, maybe?
Whitehair. I mean, you've got to find a spot for him, and I know Jatari Carter has struggled a bit at right guard, so moving him over there, and then, of course, if if Darnell Wright's not able to play, I mean, he was limited today. He has a shoulder injury. I guess we cross that bridge about who's playing right tackle if we get to it. But the Whitehair stuff is interesting. I think he's very self-aware that he struggled at center and that, this was a position that they expected him to play this year. When they brought in Nate Davis, they moved Tevin Jenkins over. They keep Cody Whitehair around when they could have released him. He could have been a cap casualty, but this team had a lot of spending that they had to do to hit their cash floor, and they kept him around because he's a quality offensive lineman, and they expected him to play center. He's been moved all over the place, and center clearly is not the best fit for him right now. And when I asked him, did you take reps at that today? He said, I'm just going to do what's best for the team. So that to me was a no, and we didn't see him snapping out there
I
earlier.
wouldn't play him at center again this
year.
What, is it the yips, or is he just bad at it?
I mean, he started, correct me if I'm wrong, he started his career playing a lot 2016 through the COVID year at center, and then they moved him to guard, and I think this is just pointing to one of the priorities this offseason. Teams, of course, are going to cross-train guys on the interior of the offensive line. You have to because of injuries, but having a true, pure center is really important. You're not just snapping the ball, you're calling out protections. And he's a veteran. He knows that. And I think that he knows that there were some moments that he wishes he could have had back against Minnesota. But you can't, when you have a Division II turned NFL starter for the first time quarterback going into the game, don't mess with the offensive line. Don't mess with the most important position there at center. You got to have the symbiotic relationship and have it down pat. So they're not going to be able to experiment this week. Okay, well, maybe Cody's got it this week. No, you have to go with the best center that you have. And if that's Lucas Patrick, then it's Lucas Patrick.
And then that's not saying much. There's the one viral video, the 10-second video,
with him and
where it's Keystone Cops, and he's Cody Whitehair is blocking another Bear.
Yeah.
Carter.
Yeah. That's
And he's the one that's responsible for setting protection. So
yes.
I look, he's had a nice career. You could still use him at guard. I would not play him at center anymore. And Courtney, as you said, look, the last thing you want this kid from a small school to have to worry about is the snap as well. I mean, you shouldn't have to ask Justin to worry about the snap either. Speaking of Justin, I know they're being very vague. This is what they do. Do you have any insight into how long you think that this is going to last, or any updated information on how severe the injury could be?
So he was in the locker room earlier, and I didn't see him he walked in, he had a little bit of a brace on his thumb. But he wasn't wearing it the whole time. I don't know how much you can look into that versus if this, the swelling. I can't tell if it's swollen or not. Matt Eberflus did say that whoever's telling him, relaying information to him from the MRI, that the swelling has gone down a little bit today. We'll see if that means he can avoid surgery or if that ends up being something that they can avoid. There's too much ambiguity. There's too many vague comments from the head coach to know for certain right now.
So nothing would surprise you if you learn later in the week that he's
the way
coming
that
back?
It's been phrased, no. And I think that does this whole situation a massive disservice. But if that's the way that they want to play it, then that's what they're going to do. For Fields, you've got to wonder if he ends up having, the best case scenario is that the swelling goes down to a point where they can determine no ligament damage and they can tape this thumb. And I know that sounds like really a janky thing to do, but
for a thumb on a throwing hand.
Correct. Yeah. That's why Eberflus keeps referring to grip strength, but he also said that they've seen other injuries, thumb injuries, where taping it has been the workaround to being able to get guys back out there. But if he can't grip the ball and if he can't do what he needs to do, he can't play. You can't risk that, especially with ball security as important as it is, and him having some issues with that throughout his career. You want to make sure you're not putting him in a position where he can re-injure it. So would it surprise me if we get to Friday and they're like, hey, we're not going to put him on IR. He's out for this game. But it might be 1 or 2 weeks. Sure, that wouldn't surprise me. Would it also surprise me if they're like, yep, he's actually going to need surgery? The way that this team has handled this information, you heard Eberflus say nothing's on the table, nothing's off the table. I don't know if it's under the table.
Is there a table?
Or if it's
Is there a table anywhere?
But it's don't take medical. I would just say don't take medical advice from NFL coaches. That's one thing I've learned this week.
Or maybe even football advice sometimes from football coaches, depending on the football coach. So we were talking about Russell Wilson a couple of years ago. He rushed back from a finger injury.
Yep.
It wasn't a thumb, But finger injury, we know about Rodgers last year playing through a thumb injury. I think it was a broken thumb. A lot of times guys want to rush back because it's in their DNA. They want to be out there for their teammates. They want to be out there to help. This guy is being judged on everything. He's playing for his football future here.
Sure.
Does that figure into the equation for him?
It has to. It has to, because, I mean, and you got to protect the player from himself, because for Justin Fields, let's play the scenario that he has to go on injured reserve. So that's 4 games. That would be the
You're going
Detroit
into
game,
yeah,
in,
Detroit,
like that he'd be back for.
Yeah.
The pressure, I can't even imagine what that pressure would be like on him. Then he comes back and he's got a month and some change to prove that he's the long-term option here before the Bears end up potentially with a 1 or 2 top 5 picks. Like, that's something that I think they're going to have to guard against, and I think Fields too has to. I can't imagine the weight on him.
If I was his agent, I would tell him, don't put bad tape on display just because you want to rush back because of that pressure, and then now play even worse because you're playing through discomfort.
And I will say, I know the debate has been up because we want to foreshadow this thing out. What if Tyson Bagent plays great? Does that mean Fields doesn't get his job back? I do not think this is the last time we've seen Justin Fields, barring surgery. I do not think this is the last time we've seen Justin Fields play football for the Chicago Bears. If he comes back, if he doesn't need surgery, and it's just, a 1 game, 2 game, 3 game, however many game absence, like, he will get his job back, and he will have a chance to have those however many games left to prove himself. The only situation I've seen that in where that hasn't happened was when I covered Minnesota in 2017. So, like, Sam Bradford goes down with a non-contact knee injury. Teddy Bridgewater can't come back yet because he's on PUP because of his knee. Like, Case Keenum kept winning games, and they were in position to go to the NFC Championship. You're not going to get off a winning horse there. This team is not going to be in position to go to the NFC Championship. No. And so that's, I think, something that we have to kind of, temper expectations there. That, wow, what if he plays so great that it might put Justin Fields at a disadvantage? Fields, when he's ready, when he's healthy, will get his job back.
We're getting close to the NFL trade deadline. Obviously, this is trade season. What is your anticipation? What will they do, and who potentially could be somebody they're talking about?
It's interesting now because of some of the developments, especially with this defensive backfield. So Eddie Jackson has that foot injury, and it sounds like he aggravated it. It's the same foot that he had injured, and he missed a couple of games, comes back. And someone I was talking with on another team who Jackson has come up with in conversations brought up, well, maybe this isn't a trade candidate now because you worry about the health of a 7-year veteran player who's dealt with the same foot injury now for 2 seasons. And, of course, the idea of Jalen Johnson, that's going to be floated out there by, for a lot of different reasons, not just that he has the contract situation. He's not under contract for next year. It's so rare that you can make an actual improvement, a big upgrade at cornerback. He's been terrific in coverage. So the Bears, even if they say right now that they've maintained that they want to keep him here long term, he says he wants to stay here long term. If that call comes in, you've got to answer it. But Terrell Smith is going to be out 3 to 4 weeks. Right. So the him getting mono might throw a wrench into this to where they're like, we can't afford to get rid of somebody via trade, even if it helps us for next year, because who are we going to have playing opposite Tyreek Stevenson since Terrell Smith is, that's the Carolina game, I think, at earliest that he could come back.
What about Mooney? Would they look at dealing Mooney if they're not going to throw to Mooney? Could they get a draft pick? Like, I love Darnell Mooney.
I think the coaches want them to throw to Mooney. They're just the quarterbacks haven't found Darnell Mooney.
I agree with that. Yeah. I can't. If they get rid of Mooney, who else do they have? I mean, Tyler Scott's his moment's coming because they spent a 4th-round draft pick on him.
He's not ready to take over for Mooney, is it?
But I don't. Yeah, I think.
Well, I mean, but how ready do you have to be for one target? You know what I mean?
Again,
I know.
But that's looking at the problem, I think, in the wrong order. I mean, the problem with Mooney isn't Mooney; it's the guys throwing to.
No,
Mooney.
I know that. I know, but there's only a few games left on his contract. Is my point. And if you can get a draft pick and a rebuild, do you just keep forcing the issue with Mooney and try and figure it out in the 11 games you have left?
I also think it's on.
Or do you try and get what you can for him if
Well,
Kansas
what can you
City
get
comes?
for him?
I don't know.
The guy has nothing on tape this year. He has the Green Bay game. He has nothing on tape to show it. I mean,
I want to keep him.
he had a
if
great
it was up to
season
me,
in
I'd re-sign him.
I agree. I think he's a good part of this offense.
Me
and he's a
too.
good piece culturally for this locker room. Like, you can't get rid of all of your locker room
No,
leaders.
I know.
and
If
he's
you
one of
traded
them.
if you traded Mooney, it'd be a sure sign that they've already made their decision on Justin.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to remove pieces. If you're still evaluating him, you're not going to remove pieces from
But
the
Justin
offensive
doesn't want to use him.
Well, that's another conversation.
I know, that's what I'm
That's
saying.
another
So how is that deciding on Justin?
That's why this team is 1-5 and has won one game over the course of the last 15 or 16
That
tries.
surprised me the most about what's happened with Justin is that the chemistry that I always thought those two had would shine through even more, even with DJ Moore, and it would only help expand the offense, and it shrunk.
It has, and it's not just this year. That was taking place last year too. Like, you could tell towards the end. Like, it's not necessarily a knock on either one of them, but the production wasn't there. He finished with the most receiving yards last year in Week 12 and didn't play again. And it's not like his production was anything to call home about. The order in which, like, chicken and egg argument here, is it the quarterback or is it the wide receiver? It's not like Mooney's not getting open. And I feel like this is a situation too. You can scheme some easy throws for him. For Tyson Bagent that involved Darnell Mooney, that involved DJ Moore. The one thing I'll say about Bagent with that, you'd be pleased when you look at the tape in the second half. DJ Moore got more targets in the second half from Tyson Bagent than he did from Justin Fields, and that he's willing to take a shot when he sees somebody singled up on the side, like down the sideline, throw the ball. And that's something that it was an underthrown ball. It was a poor throw on him, but he's 9 times out of 10 he's going to go do that again.
Yeah.
He worked the middle of the field as well, and that's one thing that this team has missed totally, in my opinion. Like, when you put 6 games on tape and you're not trying to affect the middle of the field, you make life easy on defensive coordinators. The seam route that he threw to DJ Moore, that's the first time we've seen that route thrown to a wide receiver this year. They threw a seam to Cole Kmet in a broken coverage against the Denver Broncos, and that one was completed. I thought Bagent threw it. He threw a slant behind. I think it was Tyler Scott. It may have been whoever it was. But they've got to start working the middle of the field. You can't just threaten the outside.
It's like they're playing cover 2 against themselves.
Yes, exactly.
The middle field's gone.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that's part of whoever's under center or in shotgun formation has to start using the entire field to make a defense have to worry about covering the entire field.
Courtney, great stuff. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Courtney.
Courtney Cronin, all over the Bears.